Hello and welcome back to IDOE's COVID webinar. We are at webinar number 8. So we have been at this a while. I know you're all feeling it, but those numbers through the week kind of solidify that. So webinar number 8. Again, I want to thank everybody. I hope this webinar finds you well. I know things are not getting any easier and I know things are not slowing down. So having said that though, I do hope that this webinar does find you getting a little bit of time to take care of yourselves because I know it's been taxing on all of us. The reminder, the email at the bottom of the screen, I think most of you have that memorized because we get several emails, but continue to use that during the webinar and outside of the webinar. It's the best way to get a hold of us and hopefully get some answers. I also want to recognize it's Teacher Appreciation Week. So for all of you who have been a teacher or in the past or are a teacher now, I just want to thank you for everything you do for our students, especially during this time of COVID. I know we're in uncharted territory for many of us, and so for teachers out there, thank you for what you do. Respect all of you, and we cannot do it without you. So happy Teacher Appreciation Week. Also on Wednesday of this week is National Nurses Day, School Nurses Day. So it's Nurses Week, but on Wednesday it's School Nurses Day. And I also want to thank those nurses who are out there who do a magnificent job year round, but also at this time we really are relying on heavily. So thank you to our school nurses. So a couple of updates since the last webinar, since the governor's last executive order. Obviously a lot of questions on June 30 again. So about the buildings, facility, and grounds. To us, closed means closed. I know a lot of school attorneys are having conversation with their clients to help provide them with guidance, but a couple of unique situations have come up that we are seeking more guidance on. One is some of our schools have been reached out from our counties about jury duty, using the school for jury duty because of the size of the juries that they're looking at and not being able to accommodate those in our county buildings. We are getting guidance on that. We feel like that may be an essential function, but we are waiting on the governor's office to respond to that particular issue. The other is elections that are coming up, using election sites at schools. Again, we're seeing that as probably an essential function of the government, but we also need some guidance. We're also hearing a lot about churches that are being utilized in our schools, and then also sporting facilities. So the sporting facility one is a little bit easier, but I know probably more widespread. As far as some of our schools contract their facilities out to youth leagues, others have some type of a 50-50 partnership, others just on the grace of allowing those youth leagues to utilize their facilities, and what does that look like? So we are trying to gather some information, but your best bet right now is your school attorney to give you guidance. Every area is different. So for instance, we have Marion County who is extending some things, and St. Joe, I believe, extending some of those stay-at-home orders and looking at that a little differently. So pockets of Indiana are different than other pockets of Indiana. So your best bet, given where your location is to have that conversation with your school attorney. I know what would be easier, and I know what you're all looking for, a blanket statement from the department, but it's not that easy. Just as you are muddling through this, we are doing the best we can as well. So we will get you answers, put them on the FAQ as quickly as we can get those. But again, we don't have all that answered right now. I know a big piece of it is athletics, that we have folks who are some of the coaches, hey, I hear you, save your tweets, that are worried about the gyms are opened up, why can't we bring kids into our weight rooms? Our weight room is our community gym, and so the vicious cycle and circle continues. And I am a big proponent of athletics. I too want those kids to have opportunity and just for their mental health along with physical health. I know many of them have scholarships tied to opportunities involving that, so I understand all that, but we want to make sure that we are not putting you in a situation that is hard to explain if you have students get ill or staff members get ill, coaches, or family members impacted. So a lot of questions out there regarding that youth piece. We know when the youth leagues opened up, earlier than the schools are going to open up, that put all of you in a predicament. So many of you have said school, close means close. Others are trying to muddle through. So we too are trying to provide you better guidance, but your best bet is your school attorney in order to not put yourself in a liability issue. The return of staff. We've had a ton of people reach out and say, we want our stuff, or the kids want their own personal belongings. We've had a number of districts who have already addressed that. We are not going to get in the middle of how to do that, when to do that, why or why not to do that. You need to pay attention to where you are located in the state as far as your county orders, but you also need to, your superintendents have done a great job of working with health departments to say, this is what we want to do, this is our plan, you're following all the guidance, but if you find it essential that staff and students get their personal belongings, there is a way to do that. So many schools, like I said, have already done that, but many other schools are trying to find an avenue to get there. So there is a way. If you so choose to do so. If not, if you want students to wait, that is completely a local decision. A couple of things regarding NAEP, which is an assessment that is given at particular grade levels. NAEP 2021, they did come out, sent us a memo and said we will be administering it during 2021. Materials are usually distributed to schools in May. They will be coming in the summer. Not sure how they are defining summer. But more information will be coming from NAEP. So I didn't want those principals or those schools or superintendents who are communicated with by NAEP that it's a surprise. They have told us that they do plan on running that assessment. As far as professional development, a reminder, we've got lots of virtual PD that is posted. We need to check out the calendar on the IDOE website. So there is a lot that is still happening through the summer regarding computer science and TitleCon and a lot of different SEL, a lot of different areas where lots of opportunity for summer professional development. So make sure you're checking out that calendar. We are being diligent to make sure it's updated. So if you have PGP points that are needed for your educators, or you're looking for a particular niche that you're looking for some intensity this summer for your staff, then check out the calendar. The STEM Acceleration Grant, there is a budget modification. I'm going to turn this piece over to Robin LeClaire so she can explain the STEM Acceleration Grant and some of the modifications with that, because I know that impacts a lot of you.
Good morning. I know that we have received many questions about the 2019 STEM and digital learning grants. So we want to clear it up and let you know that we have provided flexibility for you in light of the current circumstances. We want to make sure that schools get to keep that money and use that money in the best way possible. So if you need to change the activities that you itemized in your grant application or your budget form because those activities are no longer realistic or on the same timeline that they were, all you will need to do is fill out a budget modification form, and you can contact our office. Jake Caressel or Liz Sutton can help you with those. So please reach out so that we can help you get the activities that you want to have for your school that you think would be most beneficial in light of the current circumstances. Additionally, the spending deadlines, which were June 30th for 2020 and September 30th of 2020, respectively, for STEM and DLG, those have been extended to June 30 of 2021 and September of 2021, respectively. Now, for the 2020 grants, STEM and DLG grants, we've not extended that deadline because that's already June 30th of 2021. So we won't be extending that at this time. We will, monitor and hear from you, your emails and concerns. If that becomes a concern, we can extend that. But at this time, we're hoping that you'll be able to make those expenditures, even if you need to change your grant application or budget modification form a little bit, which we can still do. But we're hoping you'll still be able to spend those monies by the end of June of 2021.
Perfect. So on the legislative front, obviously we are providing a great deal of guidance because we talked about this at our last webinar that there are pieces of legislation that will have a big impact. We are releasing that, I know, weekly, so make sure you are looking at the SAMs and PAMs or the weekly update. Make sure you're checking out the Legislative Affairs website where it is all archived for that information. So more information is coming out every week, and some of those are big lifts, some of them not as big, but regardless, you need to make sure that you are prepared. Many of them go into effect in July. So just keeping you updated on that legislative piece, that I just don't want someone to miss things because your plates are so full, and I know we're getting ready to add on to those, but we want you to make sure that you have yourselves covered. So also this school use of the election primaries we covered, but just a reminder, those are moved to June 2nd. So if you have been communicated regarding can you use the building, can you not, which again, we're waiting on the governor's answer to that essential function, but those have been moved to June 2nd. As far as graduation flexibility, we've had a ton of questions about the cohort group 2020 and the fifth-year seniors. As a reminder, the flexibility for 2020 has already gone out. So that's the flexibility that talked about if you were enrolled in the course, you receive recognition for the course and the credits that you've already earned, and all that went out. It seems like months ago, but it went out earlier so people could prepare. At the time, that was not going to be extended to fifth-year seniors and adult education. Since then, the State Board of Education, I know, has fielded a lot of calls, as we have, regarding the need for that to be extended. So there is a change from the original guidance put out by the State Board of Ed staff regarding that is going to the flexibility for the class of 2020 will also be for fifth-year seniors and will also be for adult education. So we know that a change in that is frustrating as you've been trying to operate and do what you needed to do, but we do appreciate that that change has been extended, and hopefully that will help some of you. It is being addressed on the FAQ number 28. So the graduation flexibility document, it's not, the document itself is not changing. The amount of students that are being impacted, that is the piece that is changing. So look at the FAQ number 28. Again, no additional guidance. It's the same guidance, just more students are being impacted. The collection of student addresses. I know we talked about this briefly a couple of times now, but as a reminder, those are due May 8th. IDOE is working with FSSA to collect those. Now, this has become maybe a little bit bigger than what we anticipated because it does impact those families who are eligible for the PEBT cards, which is the electronic benefits transfer card. About 60% of you have already submitted the addresses to the department. The department's just passing those through to FSSA. However, we are collecting those through our STN application center. So if you have not submitted those addresses for your students, please do so. Again, 60% of them have already been done, but May 8th is the deadline. It's coming up soon. After you submit those addresses to us, the physical addresses, knowing that kids are mobile, but do the best you can, there is nothing more that you will need to do. Families do not need to take any action. Schools do not need to take any action. FSSA will mail the benefit cards to those qualified families. So really, it's good for your families. We just need some help in making sure those addresses have been submitted. That program, the addresses, may also be used for some future benefits and resources that the state is looking at in partnership with some other entities and with the federal government. So make sure that we have the best addresses that you can give us at this point. The IDOE reentry group, I want to give a shout out to them, doing a very important work. We've had some good conversations and a lot of follow-up from those members as well. Just so you know, here is the group makeup. We have urban, suburban, and rural districts all represented and across the state of Indiana. We've got 5 practicing superintendents and 2 who are retired. We have 2 principals, 1 tech director, 1 school attorney, a CFO, a curriculum director, an AD, a school nurse. We have the health department. We have obviously our department. In addition, then, we also used a phase 2 for our advisory where we brought all the organizations to the table as far as teachers associations, principals, superintendents, school boards, all of those folks in the governor's office to make sure that we were being inclusive and that document was as tight as we could make it. So what we did is went across the nation, got a lot of different plans that have already been put out, did a lot of crosswalking to what makes sense for Indiana, made a document and prepared that for reentry. And all it really, our goal was to stay tight on guidance for health, the health piece of it, and loose on implementation with curriculum and instruction. So that was our guidance, because we know for some of the health issues, you need really tight guidance because you are not health experts. But for the curriculum and instruction, it is so localized that you needed some flexibility there. So tight on the health part and the medical part guidelines, but a little loose on the curriculum and instructional guidelines. We have sent that document to the health department now that it's pretty much in its finalized form. We will add if we need to. We also sent it to the governor's office to show the magnitude of what we're looking at as far as reentry. We know there are a lot of questions on what fall will look like, even what this summer starting in July will look like. There are just so many questions that people need answers to, from extracurricular, including athletics, band, any of your clubs, drama, a lot of those that get really robotics, get busy in the summer, all the way into that fall reentry. So we are trying to get you the best answers we can, so that you have some idea of those guidelines. We are also doing a cross-check to the CDC guidance. Part of what we're hearing from other states that are trying to reopen is the difficulty of following CDC, where on Monday the guidance may be one thing, on Tuesday it changes, and the schools are caught in the middle of that. So not that the CDC doesn't have their hands full, but the inconsistency makes it very difficult for schools across the nation that are trying to open up. So we are trying our best to provide you with guidance from the school bus to the swimming pool to your outdoor facilities to the classroom. Just a lot of questions on how this is going to look. Will you or will you not be required for your students and your staff to wear masks? And how does that look? The hand washing techniques that they are telling us, if they do come back, how many students, the spacing of our students in the classroom. Some of you are looking at a hybrid situation of virtual and on-site, and how to minimize those numbers, and just a lot out there. But with the unknowns, that's exactly what we're doing, is hoping for the best and planning for the worst case scenario. We may be looking like we do currently right now. We just simply do not know. But the better time, the sooner you have that guidance, we know the better off you will be to develop your own type of reentry or going back type of plan. So thank you to those who participated. Well, I know the urban districts have asked a lot of questions about who was at the table. You were at the table. The urban or the urban districts basically were all were represented by their association. So it had great feedback from Dave in that situation, but there were a lot of questions regarding making sure that everybody was covered from rural to suburban to urban, and I feel like we did a pretty good job of doing that. So those are the phases of the coverage, and then when that is taken care of, we will communicate to the field as well. The CARES webinar series, there has been a change in CARES, so I know the CFOs right now that are dying in their seats. On Thursday of this week, we're going to have another webinar. Nathan will have a webinar for CARES Act, but here's what has happened. So on last Thursday evening, our team received an email from the feds that put new guidelines on the CARES money that is coming to you locally. Not our money, but on your money that is coming to you locally. We've already told you your amount, your allocation, but they came out with new guidance. So what has happened is we put a memo out last Friday. We sent that to superintendents and title directors and coordinators, letting them know the situation. But despite the law saying how the money needed to be spent and how equitable service shares would be made through Title I, the feds came back and said they're going to reconcile their differences. And so now the equitable share calculation will be 3 times what it normally is for title. So that is significant for some of you. So where you are counting on that CARES money, which I have made it crystal clear, I would be very cautious with that money right now for a lot of different reasons, and this is one of them. So right now, the feds came back and said your equitable share will be 3 times what it normally is. Nathan's going to cover that this Thursday at his webinar, so I would encourage you to tune in for more details. Also, just so you understand what that means, the LEAs will use enrollment rather than your poverty. So that piece of it is changing as well to come up with that 3 times for equitable share. After Thursday's webinar with Nathan, then we're going to open up the CARES Act application. So he will walk you through that on Thursday as well. So Thursday's webinar at 1 o'clock Eastern Time with Nathan Williamson for our Title I. It's going to be pretty meaty, so I would encourage you, if you can't attend, find someone in your district who can. So I know it's hard right now, but find someone who can listen. I would also encourage you to make sure that if your CFO isn't involved at that level, that you at least tell your CFO what is going on so that they understand that that CARES money is changing as we speak. So again, from the beginning, very cautious and conservative with that CARES money, and this is a perfect example why. The health department and FEMA. So last week we talked about they are going to have webinars regarding the FEMA public assistance training to help schools with concerning and relatable costs. Those are starting on May 11th. They're going to be done by region for districts. So they're dividing the districts into regions to make it more manageable. Go to our FAQ number 9. Again, FAQ number 9 for an update on that FEMA public assistance webinar. I would encourage all of you to at least participate in the webinar, whether you think you're going to have massive costs or not. Most of the schools I know are saying we're going to have costs, but go to that or at least participate in the webinar so that you are aware of what is going on. Summer school update for 2020. Please be looking, or I guess in Sam's and Pam's last Friday, our weekly update on May 1, there was information that was put out from the state board regarding the 15 student minimum that has been lifted. So obviously our goal is for you to hit that magic 15 number for your funding, but if you can't, given the situation, you will still have funding available. So go to our frequently asked question, number 50, for information on that. And having said that, I know that FAQ is getting quite long. And we've had the internal conversation of how big is too big. We're going to leave it as is for now, because I know some of you are really relying on that. But just know there's a lot of information flowing. But in the near future, we may have some minor changes to that. We're having that internal conversation, but I hate to disrupt something that you may be used to at this point, but I understand an FAQ typically isn't that big, but given the situation, that one-stop shop has seemed to be helpful for a lot of people. Oh, this is a webinar update for these webinars. We've had them every week to this point. Starting from this point on, we will be doing every other week. So the next webinar will be May 19th at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. So you just gained 2 Tuesdays a month. So, but hopefully we will keep you still information coming with the FAQ, with our weekly Sam's and Pam's, our weekly updates. So there will still be a mechanism to keep you informed. What we don't want to do is have a webinar for the sake of having a webinar, and we've said that all along. So again, starting for the next webinar, it will be on May 19th at 10 Eastern Time. So we will be posting that on the FAQ. Our concern with that is it's hard to track that sometimes. Like, is this a webinar week? Is it not a webinar week? So we will be hitting social media and our weekly update to help you with that. But just know our next one we'll skip next week and come back. That'll also give you Memorial Day week, although it's all blending together to take a break. So here are the questions. Let me guess about June 30. Okay, so the first one is building access. So can we allow students who need to be assessed for EL services or other assessments into our administrative building if social distancing guidelines are followed? Part of the guidance from the executive order was to allow continuous learning to happen. There are some essential functions. If your district deems that to be essential to bring someone else on site, clearly following the procedures that have been put in place by our health department and the CDC and your local health department, that is a decision that is up to your local school boards and school administration. But again, I would also give a call to your health department, letting them know what's happening. But for continuous learning to happen, you do have some flexibility. Finance operations in the fall. If a school is able to follow the population rule to have students attend physically 50% of the time, can those students as brick and mortar on the ADM? So I believe you're referring to the virtual students on ADM collect 85%. traditional brick and mortar, on-site, 100%. But that 50% threshold is what dictates that. Right now, from our understanding is, yes, that currently is standing. We have sent that up to the higher ups to say this is a huge concern. We think it is very limiting on your creative scheduling and what you need to do for the health and safety of your students. But I also understand too, there are so many concerns with the revenue, with property tax collections down the road, with what may or may not happen to referendums. There are just so many unknowns financially that people are very skittish about being okay with a tuition support cut of 15% for if not all, many of your students. So we will get that answer. The other part of that is, can that 50% be chunked together in 1 day or 2 days and the rest of the week be virtual? You are determining what that looks like. You do not want us in the middle of your schedule. So 50% of instruction time is how you define 50% of your instruction time looking. Some folks are doing it every other day, and then the other part of their chunk of time is virtual. So that hybrid piece becomes pretty important. You're just trying to hit the threshold of that 50% right now. That could change. Again, that could change as it did this year. We were under virtual without taking a cut. So we have asked, again, for further guidance of those who have the authority to make that forgiveness. So, you know, how you chunk that, how you schedule that. I know people are being very thoughtful in the anticipation, if nothing changes, what does that look like as far as the money piece? Graduation, the governor's office, Indiana back on track, phase 2 says DOE is developing special graduation guidance ceremonies. When will we receive this? So I believe it went out.
Is it on the FAQ?
It's on the FAQ number what? So here's what's happened. Most of that special guidance we've already put out. We tweaked that guidance a little bit because we put out how to run virtual, how to do a car graduation. We already put that out weeks ago. This is basically a little tweak to that, and this health department pretty much blessed what we had already put out and made some very minor changes. That is on our FAQ number 51. So that guidance has already been out for some time. I know it caused some confusion because Indiana really, commend our team, and our Steve Balco was doing a lot of homework on this, and our school improvement people, and just a lot across the board, trying to put some guidance out. IU was a big help with that as well early on. So we put some guidance out, again, minor tweaks from the health department, but item number 51 should get you there. We're trying to finalize plans for graduation. Are we allowed to have graduation as long as we follow the governor's guidelines? More specifically, if we have outdoor graduation ceremonies and social distancing, is it allowed? So again, your building, facilities, and grounds are closed unless you deem something for an essential function. If you would have to follow those social distancing put on for the governor. That is one that if you have a plan, I would get to your health department. If your health department isn't available, I would go to the state health department. I would make sure your school board and your school attorneys are perfectly comfortable with it and it follows the intent of the executive order. We are not, as a department, I know I've had a ton of people saying, hey, will you look at our plan for our senior awards? Will you look at our plan for athletic awards? Will you look at our plan for graduation? I'm not going to be your problem. It's going to be your health department if something happens. So not problem, but I'm not sure I would use the Department of Education to back that. So we can offer some suggestions like we have in our guidance, but if you have a plan and once you have that established, your best bet is to work with your health departments, make sure your school boards and your superintendents obviously have a really good handle on all that and can, if some go to bat for you and defend all that. But also, I would certainly have the blessing of some health department to make sure that what you have clear is timely. So part of this, too, is it's tough to keep track of how many people define a gathering, what is that social distancing at the time, who can attend, what's the intent of the executive orders. There are a lot of layers to that I definitely would make sure that you have a health department weighing in. PPE question. The question is not for today, but later. Will schools be required to provide masks to students? So part of our reentry was that question to the health department. Should students in the fall, given who knows what it's going to look like, but if it looks similar to now, will students be required to wear masks as part of their school uniforms? Because you and I know if we tell students, hey, everybody show up with a mask, good luck. And then continuing that, good luck. So should it be part of a uniform and who provides it, which can be also tricky right now when people are having trouble getting their hands on it. Now, the health department said they could help with that, but is it just staff? Is it staff and students? What happens to those opportune times during the day where you have to take the mask off? For instance, band. If you're playing an instrument. For instance, if you are in choir, if you're singing, or if you're eating lunch, or a lot of things came up, like what are the parameters around that? Safety issues have also come up with masks on students, making sure that they're wearing a physical ID at the same time if you can't really do identification. Some of those issues came up. Right now, we do not have, there are a lot of mixed messages. Part of that depends on some of our counties and what they're saying. Part of that will depend on what our health department will say. But right now, we have no definitive answer for you. We know we're trying to get that because if you need to order, you need to order yesterday. We also talked about your handbooks for your students have got to be extremely buttoned down this year. And I know it's hard to do that with a lot of moving targets, but if you're gonna have PPE as part of the student uniform, surprising someone with that when you're trying to run disciplines is never easy. So you got school attorneys, you have ISBA attorneys. I would utilize those folks. Ask what the best, safest way to go about this would be, but a lot of it's gonna depend on the health department. In your area, which some of them have already given out guidance, or in other areas. Part of the other concern is we are so intertwined. So if I am a county that says everybody's masking up, all students, all staff, and we have an event where we have schools or students and staff coming from another county or across county, or you have students who live in one county that go to school in another county, and you have family coming onto site, and there are a lot of pieces with that are very intertwined and do not make this easy if it's not uniform across the state. But I also know too, there may be some hesitancy for that, but we will get you the best we can. It is on that document that we sent to the health department that you clearly are gonna need some guidance. Again, some of your health departments may be more aggressive in getting out in front of that to already signal to you so you know what to do, but others are still waiting. Can this be assessed as a textbook fee? So as far as how to fund that, as far as if it's like a part of the school uniform, I will have to get you further guidance on how that would look as far as the cost of that. I understand it's not going to be one mask for one student for the year. That is unrealistic. It's going to be quite expensive because you're talking realistically multiple masks for one student, and your staff are going to probably have to have multiple masks as well depending on how long, if it happens, and how long. So I appreciate the question. We will try to get you some guidance regarding that, and also some of you have reached out to say, is there going to be a statewide effort to get those costs down and just get our hands on masks? So there are a lot of questions with that. Be watching the FAQ for updates. Again, we're at the mercy of waiting on some answers. The re-entry, with the need of possible delay in the start of school, is there consideration and discussion about moving the count day to provide us the time to track down students? So a couple of things that I've heard people talk about is a potential delay until after Labor Day. I will tell you that that's not a widespread conversation, but I've heard people bring it up. Our concern is if there is a window of opportunity in August to go, knowing that from what we're hearing from the experts, fall may be rough, and I don't know when in fall, but I'm hearing late fall. That may have all changed, but that's the best I can give you today. People have said, if we can go, let's get some in, but doing it in a safe manner. So I don't know about the delay. The 180-day flexibility we are getting guidance on. I don't foresee there being a huge appetite for a large waiver. This year, we had to have a waiver. We had no planning time. You've had the summer to plan. You've had a little bit of time to better prepare. Not that it's going to look perfect, and some of you can't even get your hands on devices, and you're trying to staff up your people for better instruction via virtually. There are a lot of challenges with this, but the flexibility of 180 days, there is nothing set in stone right now. I am just being realistic that I don't think there's going to be a whole, the mass waivers I don't think will be probably as prevalent. So plan accordingly on the 180 days, and I know many of you are for a lot of reasons. One, you want to get them in for the student's sake, but also you understand the barriers that are in place and are really trying your hardest to try to break those down and get prepared. Clarification on essential. Please explain or restate the state determines essential activities of school buildings. So part of that essential piece is what's essential for government functions. That's more legally defined. Some of it as far as essential at the local level has been defined of we have to, for continuous learning, it is essential I allow my kids to go get their textbooks, or I allow kids to go get their running shoes that are stuck in their locker so they can do PE at home. There are different ways, but as far as essential in the EO, the essential functions is more defined, and we get clarification from attorneys, but essential government functions, which is a little different. That would be like elections and different things, but that essential piece as determined to continue your learning or continue the learning piece is what's best for kids. How you define that is essential. You're talking the example that I gave you, like going to get if you need a device to continue learning and you don't have it at home, you need to go back to school. That's essential to keep learning going. So I know most schools have worked with their health department and said, hey, here's what I'm getting ready to do. This is my plan to go let students go back in and get what they need from their locker. This is my plan for staff to collect some things that they need to plan for summer school. They work through that with their health department. We have had no issues to date, but essential is defined differently depending on what we're looking at. Some schools have teachers cleaning classrooms due to construction projects and moving to a new building for the fall, while other school corporations are keeping teachers out of the building. So what is the difference between schools? Well, they're defining what is essential to keep continuous learning. So each school system can define that. If they say we have to have more manpower to clean because we're getting ready to open parts to do essential pieces that we have defined after June 30, and this is what we need to do, there are just a lot of decisions that need to be made. But each district is very different in defining what needs to happen and when. Obviously, I am not an attorney, we've covered that before, but I would definitely make sure you are working with your health departments and you are working with your school attorneys and your superintendents and school boards to make sure that that is defined the way the intent of it. So I know there are a lot of people who have called back custodians, they've called back tech folks, and other districts have not. It depends on what is essential for you to operate, and each school will be different. Is that all? So at this time, that is the conclusion of our questions. Again, use the email at the bottom for further questions. If we didn't answer your question, but you sent it and it was a really good one and you're upset we didn't cover it, we will get you an answer. But we will see you again, not next week, but the week after for the next webinar. And thank you for everything you're doing, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week.